church was colder than I remembered. Maybe it wasn't the draft slipping through the old stained glass windows. Maybe it was the weight in the air, pressing on everyone's chest, making it hard to breathe. Black veils, black coats, black tears. The echo of sobs bouncing against the walls. My mother's trembling hand clutched mine so tightly, I thought my bones might crack. She leaned against me, whispering through her grief. "Clara, why her? Why now? Eva, my little sister." At 32, she was the kind of woman who made heads turn when she walked into a room. And now, here she was, lying in a casket, or so we believed. I swallowed, staring at the coffin draped in white lilies, her favorite flower. I'd arranged them myself, with hands that shook so badly I could barely hold the stems. Guilt gnawed at me. We hadn't spoken properly in months. Our last conversation had ended in anger, her voice sharp, mine stubborn. And now, this? Guests filled the pews, relatives, friends, neighbors. Some whispered, some wept, some sat stunned in silence. A cousin dabbed her eyes. Uncle Richard sighed dramatically, as if the grief was heavier on his shoulders than anyone else's. I wanted to roll my eyes at him, but I didn't. Not here. The priest stepped forward, clearing his throat. "We gather today to mourn Eva." The sound of her name nearly broke me. I gripped my mother's hand tighter. She whimpered, hiding her face in her handkerchief. My chest burned. Why does death always come before forgiveness? And then, the heavy church doors creaked. Every head turned. Click, click. The sound of high heels on stone echoed down the aisle. I felt my blood run cold. My eyes locked onto the impossible. It was Eva, alive, walking, breathing. She was dressed in black silk, as if mocking the occasion, a delicate veil covering half her face, and she was smiling. Not a tearful smile of relief. Number, a triumphant smile, like a queen returning from exile. Gasps erupted. Someone screamed. My mother dropped her handkerchief and clutched her chest. "Ava?" Her voice cracked like glass. I couldn't move. My knees trembled so hard I thought I might collapse. "Good afternoon, everyone," Eva said smoothly, her voice slicing through the chaos. "Surprised to see me?" The room erupted. An aunt fainted, toppling sideways. A cousin shouted something about ghosts. The priest stammered, crossing himself. Uncle Richard shot up, eyes wide, then slowly, too slowly, sat back down with a smirk tugging at his lips. My mother sobbed, trying to stand, but nearly fell. I caught her, whispering, "Careful, Mom. It's okay, I've got you." But I wasn't sure it was okay. None of this made sense. Eva moved closer to the coffin, her heels clicking like a metronome of dread. She stopped before it, tilting her head as she stared down at her own portrait framed beside the flowers. "How touching," she whispered. "You really thought I was gone." The crowd murmured louder, panic spreading like fire in dry grass. I wanted to demand answers, to shake her and ask why, but my voice stuck in my throat. She looked up at me, straight at me, our eyes locked. The smile never left her face. "This," she said softly, so only I could hear, "was the only way to make you all listen." I froze. My heart hammered. What did she mean? What had she done? And then she raised her voice for everyone to hear. "Don't be afraid. I only wanted to see who would cry for me and who wouldn't." The church erupted into chaos. People shouted, some stormed out. Others clung to each other in horror. My mother collapsed onto the pew, tears streaking her face. But I couldn't move. Because Eva wasn't just alive. She was in control. And in that moment, I knew. This was only the beginning. If your sister walked into her own funeral alive, would you hug her or run. The sound inside the church shifted. What had begun as whispers of disbelief turned into a rising wave of screams and gasps. I could hear chairs scraping, heels clattering against the stone floor, and the sharp crack of glass as someone dropped a vase in panic. My mother clutched my arm so tightly I thought her nails would pierce my skin. "Clara, is that really her?" Her voice trembled, lost between hope and terror. I stared at Eva, unable to answer. Her veil shimmered under the dim light, and her smile remained, calm, cruel, unwavering. "She's dead!" a cousin shouted. "I saw the body!" Eva tilted her head, amused. "Did you?" Gasps spread. A woman in the second row fainted, her husband rushing to catch her. The priest raised a shaking hand, his lips moving in prayer. "Ghost!" someone hissed. "It's a ghost!" But ghosts don't smirk like that. Eva walked slowly toward the front, every step deliberate, like a queen in her court. "You look pale, Clara," she murmured as she passed me. "You of all people should have known I wouldn't leave so easily." Her words made my stomach twist. What did she mean by "I of all people"? My mother tried to stand. "Eva, my baby, how could this—" Her knees buckled. I caught her, but she was trembling too violently to hold herself upright. Eva stopped near the coffin and spread her arms wide. "Look at all of you!" Crying, collapsing, whispering like frightened sheep. This is exactly why I had to do it. "Do what?" Uncle Richard barked, his voice booming across the hall. His face was red, but his eyes glistened with something else. Not fear, satisfaction. He wasn't shocked. Not like the rest of us. Eva smirked at him. "Oh, don't act surprised, Uncle. You know perfectly well what this is." A hush fell. All eyes turned between them. My pulse quickened. Was he involved? The priest stepped forward, clutching his Bible. "Miss Eva, whatever performance this is, it is cruel. Your mother is faint with grief. Your family—" Eva cut him off, her voice sharp as glass. "My family never saw me until I was dead. So I gave them what they wanted. A corpse. And now, I've returned to ask them a question." She turned, eyes sweeping the room. The silence was suffocating. Who here truly loved me? It wasn't a question for comfort. It was a dagger thrown into the crowd. Relatives shifted uncomfortably. Some looked down. Some avoided her gaze altogether. My mother sobbed harder, muttering prayers through her tears. Eva smiled, but it wasn't kind. "See? Even in death, or the illusion of it, I was just an inconvenience. Nothing more than gossip and pity. Stop this madness." I finally found my voice. My hands were trembling, but my words carried through the hall. "This isn't love, Eva. This is cruelty." Her eyes snapped to me. The smile faded. For a brief moment, I saw something else flicker there. Hurt, maybe, or rage too raw to hide. Then she laughed, a laugh so cold it silenced the room. "Cruel?" she whispered. "You haven't seen cruel yet?" My heart stuttered. The room seemed to shrink, the walls pressing closer. I could feel the eyes of every relative on me, waiting, watching, desperate for answers I didn't have. Then, as if to punctuate her threat, Eva leaned against the coffin, her own coffin, and whispered, "This is only Act 1. The crowd erupted again. Screams, prayers, accusations. Someone shouted to call the police. Another yelled for an ambulance for my mother. I stood frozen, my mother's weight heavy in my arms, my eyes locked on Eva. Because I knew in my bones that she wasn't bluffing. She had something planned, something worse. And I was terrified that I was at the very center of it. The church had not calmed. Relatives huddled in clusters, whispering, crying, glancing at the doors as if escape might offer clarity. The priest stood pale and shaken, murmuring a prayer under his breath. My mother clung to my sleeve like a child, her entire body trembling. And Eva, she thrived in the chaos. Her heels clicked across the floor as she moved toward the altar. She wasn't rushing. No, she was savoring the moment. Every pair of horrified eyes, every broken sob, every whispered accusation. It was fuel. Enough, I whispered, though my voice cracked. My throat felt raw. Eva, stop this madness. She turned to me, tilting her head as if I had just said something amusing. Then she spoke, voice soft, deliberate, reaching every corner of the church. You want to know why I did it? Why I sent those invitations? Murmurs rippled through the pews. Even Uncle Richard leaned forward, curious. Eva spread her arms, her black veil fluttering slightly with the gesture. Because I wanted the truth. I wanted to see who would weep, who would curse, and who would secretly celebrate. Her smile twisted. And you all failed me. A loud gasp cut through the room. My mother sobbed, shaking her head. No, Eva, we love you. We... Love? Eva snapped, her voice slicing like a knife. Spare me the lies. If you loved me, you would have seen me, heard me, chosen me. Her eyes swept the room before locking on mine. That smile returned, bitter and sharp. But of course you couldn't. Clara was always there. Perfect Clara. The good daughter, the chosen one. And I was the shadow. My heart sank. The accusation was nothing new. I'd heard versions of it before, whispered during fights, screamed in anger. But hearing it here, in front of everyone, in the middle of this twisted performance, it was different. Eva, I whispered, tears burning my eyes. You were never a shadow. You were my sister. She laughed, a cold, broken laugh. Sister. You speak the word like it means something, but what have you ever shared with me, Clara? Father's praise, mother's love, the inheritance? That last word sent a chill down my spine. Uncle Richard's smirk deepened. I saw it, and so did others. A few relatives began whispering, suspicion rising like smoke. What do you mean? I asked carefully. My voice was steady this time, though my hands shook. Eva's eyes gleamed. You'll find out soon enough. The silence after those words was unbearable. It stretched, suffocating, pressing on everyone like a weight. Even the priest seemed lost for words. Finally, she turned away from me and faced the coffin again. Her fingers brushed the polished wood, slow, almost tender. I planned this for months, she said softly. Every detail, the invitations, the flowers, even the tears I knew you'd shed. And it worked. Her eyes flicked to my mother. Did you like my performance, Mother? Did you cry hard enough? Helen sobbed harder, clutching at me, unable to respond. My chest burned with rage. How could you do this to her? I demanded, stepping forward. She's your mother, Eva. Ava's lips curled. Is she? The words hit like a thunderclap. Gasps echoed across the church. My knees went weak. My mother froze, her sobs silenced into a stunned hush. What? What do you mean by that? I asked, though I wasn't sure I wanted the answer. Eva only smiled, tilting her head. Secrets, Clara. This family has always thrived on them. Consider tonight. The unveiling Uncle Richard cleared his throat loudly, as if to break the tension. She's playing games, he muttered, but his eyes betrayed something else. Fear. I swallowed hard, my pulse hammering. Something was very, very wrong. Eva leaned closer to me, her voice dropping to a whisper meant only for my ears. You'll regret standing against me. Because I'm the only one brave enough to tell the truth. I shivered. Then she stepped back, raising her voice again for all to hear. This was not a prank. This was a test, and all of you failed. But don't worry. Her smile widened, cruel and triumphant. The real show is only beginning. The church erupted again, relatives shouting, crying, some storming out into the night. My mother collapsed against me, trembling violently, and I stood frozen, because in Eva's eyes, I didn't see madness. I saw conviction. If your sister accused you of stealing love that was never yours to begin with, would you defend yourself or admit she might be right? The church was no longer a sanctuary. It had become a cage, rattling with fear, whispers, and outrage. I held my mother tightly as she trembled against me, but my eyes never left Eva. She stood by the coffin, her coffin, as if it were a stage built only for her. The flowers wilted under the heat of candles, and her presence alone seemed to suck the air out of the room. "Do you want the truth?" she said suddenly, her voice slicing through the noise. Everyone went still. Her hand dipped into her silk bag, and when she pulled it out, my heart stopped. It was a folded envelope, thick, yellowed at the edges, stamped with the lawyer's seal. My breath caught. The will. My mother gasped, clutching her chest. "Eva, how did you—" Eva's smile sharpened. "How did I get it? You should be asking why it was kept from me for so long." A collective murmur rippled through the pews. The will was supposed to be in Miss Patel's care, locked away until the day it was needed. How had Eva touched it? I looked toward the back of the room. Miss Patel stood there, stone-faced, her eyes fixed on Eva. For the first time, I thought I saw something flicker. Calculation. Eva held the envelope up high. "This," she declared, "is the truth none of you wanted to face." And guess what, Clara? She met my eyes with blazing intensity. "It doesn't favor you." The blood drained from my face. "Eva, don't." "Oh, but I must." She tore open the envelope, pulled out the folded sheets, and let them flutter open like wings of a vulture. Her voice rang out as she read. "To my beloved daughters." My mother's sob broke the silence. Her lips moved as though she wanted to stop Eva, but she was too weak. Eva's eyes scanned the page, and then she laughed. So much love on paper, yet so little in life. And what's this? Assets, properties, assigned to Clara? Always Clara. Her voice cracked with venom. The favored child, the golden one, the daughter who could do no wrong. I never asked for any of this, I shouted, my voice shaking. Eva, you think I wanted favoritism? You think I wanted this pain? She ignored me. Her fingers gripped the pages tightly. If this family insists on giving everything to Clara, then no one gets anything. And before anyone could move, she held the papers over the candle flame. Gasps exploded across the church. "No!" I cried, lunging forward. But it was too late. The edges curled black, the fire racing across the dry paper. The will shriveled and darkened, smoke spiraling toward the ceiling. My mother screamed, "Ava, stop, please!" But she didn't. She stood calmly, watching the flames devour the words, her eyes never leaving mine. "This is justice," she whispered. Relatives shrieked. Some tried to rush forward, but Uncle Richard stepped into their path, raising a hand. "Let her finish," he said, his voice oddly calm. His lips curled into the faintest of smiles. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't shocked. He wasn't horrified. He was complicit. Eva tossed the last blackened scrap onto the candles, the ash fluttering down like snow. "There," she said, dusting her hands as if she'd rid herself of dirt. "Now the game is fair." My chest tightened. Without that will, without those papers, everything my father had worked for could dissolve into chaos. "You don't know what you've done," I whispered, my voice trembling with fury. Eva stepped closer, her breath hot against my ear. "Oh, Clara," she murmured. "I know exactly what I've done." I pulled back, meeting her eyes. They burned with something terrifying. Not madness, not recklessness, but intention. The whispers of the family turned into accusations, arguments, panic. The priest begged for calm. My mother sobbed uncontrollably in my arms, but I could hardly hear them. Because as the last ashes of the will scattered across the floor, I realized this wasn't Eva's breaking point. It was her beginning. The smoke from the burning will lingered in the air, heavy and suffocating. Ashes floated down onto the carpet like tiny black snowflakes, clinging to the hems of dresses and shoes. Every eye in the room was fixed on Eva, who stood tall beside the smoldering candle, her smile a brand of victory. And then, my mother screamed. It wasn't the sharp, frightened cry of earlier. It was guttural, torn from the depths of her soul. She clutched her chest, stumbling forward, her frail body folding in on itself. "Mother!" I cried, catching her before she hit the ground. She sagged against me, her breath ragged, her face drained of color. Gasps erupted around us. Several relatives rushed forward. The priest shouted for someone to call an ambulance. Panic swept through the pews like a storm. But Eva didn't move. She didn't even blink. She watched as our mother struggled for breath in my arms, her expression as calm as if she were watching a scene she had rehearsed 100 times. "Eva, help me," I begged, tears blurring my vision. "She's your mother too." Eva's lips curled into a cold smile. "Is she?" The words struck me like ice water. My heart stuttered. "Eva, please," my mother rasped weakly, her trembling hand reaching toward her youngest daughter. "Don't do this." For the briefest second, I thought I saw something flicker in Eva's eyes, a shadow of hesitation, a crack in her armor. But then she stepped forward, crouched beside us, and whispered in my ear so only I could hear. "You were never meant to be the heir, Clara. You stole what was supposed to be mine." I froze, my arms tightening protectively around my mother. "What are you talking about?" I hissed, my voice breaking. She leaned closer, her breath warm against my ear, her words venomous. "The truth will destroy you, not me." My stomach twisted. I wanted to scream, to shake her, to force her to explain. But my mother convulsed, coughing violently, and I had no choice but to focus on her. "Stay with me, Mom," I whispered, pressing my forehead against hers. "Please, just stay with me." Two cousins lifted their phones, frantically dialing emergency services. Daniel, my quiet cousin, crouched beside me, slipping a steady hand under my mother's shoulders to help. His eyes flickered toward Eva, filled with suspicion. Eva stood, brushing invisible dust from her dress. Her eyes swept the room, catching every horrified stare, every angry whisper. She thrived on it, feeding off the fear and fury she had ignited. "Don't look at me like that," she said loudly, her voice slicing through the chaos. "I didn't kill her. But perhaps she's been dying from guilt all along." The crowd erupted, shouts, curses, cries of outrage. Someone called her a monster. Another relative shoved past her, nearly knocking her off balance. But Eva only laughed, a low, chilling sound that silenced them faster than the priest's prayers. "Don't you see?" she continued, her arms spread wide. "This is the price of lies. The truth always breaks through, even if it kills you." Her words hung in the air, venomous, poisonous. I clutched my mother tighter, my tears soaking into her black dress. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely hear anything else. Eva's shadow loomed over us, her smile still carved into her face, like a mask she'd never take off. And in that moment, I realized something I had always feared, but never admitted. My sister didn't just want revenge. She wanted to watch us all crumble. If your sibling whispered that you stole everything while your mother collapsed, would you confront her then and there, or wait to uncover the truth? The paramedics had come and gone, leaving the church in a daze. My mother had been rushed to the hospital, stabilized but frail, her sobs echoing in my ears long after the ambulance doors closed. Most of the relatives drifted outside, shaken, whispering in tight circles. Only a handful of us remained inside the dim sanctuary. Me, Daniel, Uncle Richard, and of course, Ava. She sat calmly on the coffin that should have been hers, one leg crossed elegantly over the other, as if she owned the very air we breathed. I wanted to lunge at her, to demand answers, but my body trembled too much to move. That's when Daniel approached me. His face was pale, his dark eyes restless. "Clara," he whispered, glancing around to make sure Eva wasn't listening. "Come with me." Now I followed him reluctantly, my heels clicking against the old tiles. We slipped into a side room where hymn books and choir robes were stored. He shut the door quickly, his hands shaking as he pulled something from his coat. It was a ledger. Old, leather-bound, the corners frayed. "What is this?" I asked, frowning. "I found it in Uncle Richard's study last week," Daniel murmured, flipping it open. His voice was low, urgent. I didn't know what to make of it until tonight. Look, the pages were covered in neat handwriting, columns of numbers, names, and dates. At first, it looked like an ordinary account book. But then I saw them, withdrawals, large sums of money siphoned out month after month. "Eva's name," Daniel whispered, pointing to a line. "Look again." My stomach clenched. It was there, written in black ink. E. Harlow, over and over. Eva had been taking money from the family accounts. Not just once, for years. I staggered back, the blood rushing from my face. "She's been stealing from us." Daniel nodded grimly. "Tens of thousands, maybe more. And not just from the estate accounts, personal ones too. I think she used Richard to cover it up." My mind reeled, the funeral stunt, the will, now this. But before I could speak, the door creaked. Eva leaned against the frame, arms folded, a sly smile on her face. "Really, Daniel?" she purred. "Sneaking around, playing detective?" How charming. Daniel snapped the ledger shut, holding it tight against his chest. "This is proof, Eva. Proof you've been bleeding the family dry?" Eva's laugh was low, chilling. "Proof? It's just ink on paper. Ink can be forged, numbers can be shifted. Who do you think they'll believe, The black sheep? Or me?" Her eyes flicked to me, and the smile sharpened. "Clara, don't tell me you're siding with him. After all, you've never had much talent for managing money. I always had to clean up your messes." My chest tightened with rage. "You've been stealing, Eva. All this time, and for what?" She stepped closer, lowering her voice until it was only for me. "For freedom, for power, for the life I deserved, not the scraps you and Mother decided to leave me." Daniel's hands shook as he clutched the ledger tighter. "I'll show this to everyone." "I'll expose you." Eva's smile widened. "Oh, Daniel. Sweet, foolish Daniel. Do you think they'll care about your book of numbers when I tell them your secrets?" Daniel's face drained of color. His lips parted, but no words came. My stomach turned. What secrets? Eva leaned against the wall, her posture casual, but her eyes glittered with malice. "Go ahead. Use the ledger, shout it from the rooftops, but remember this. Truth is only as powerful as the liar who tells it best." She turned, her heels echoing as she walked away, leaving a trail of silence behind her. I swallowed hard, my pulse pounding. Because Daniel was pale, sweating, his grip on the ledger trembling. and I realized Eva had just reminded us both of something terrifying. She always played the game 2 steps ahead. The next evening, the family gathered at the estate's long oak table. It should have been a place for prayers, for comfort after the chaos of the funeral that wasn't. Instead, it felt like a stage. The silverware gleamed, the candles flickered, but no one tasted the food. Plates sat untouched, soup growing cold. Every cough, every scrape of a chair echoed like thunder. My mother had insisted on being present, though the doctor warned her to rest. She sat hunched at the head of the table, pale and fragile, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her eyes darted between Eva and me, as if hoping her gaze alone could stitch the family back together. But Eva thrived in the tension. She sat opposite me, her posture perfect, her smile smug, sipping wine as though it were victory itself. Uncle Richard was beside her, leaning close, whispering now and then, the two of them sharing sly glances like co-conspirators. I sat rigid, Daniel's ledger heavy in my purse under the table. My heart raced every time Eva's eyes flicked toward me, as if she knew I carried proof of her betrayal. The silence stretched until Eva broke it, her voice dripping with mock sweetness. "Well, Clara, isn't it wonderful? We can finally have a proper family meal. No more coffins, at least for now, laughter. From her, alone. It cut through the stillness like a knife. Eva," my mother whispered weakly, "please, let's not fight." Not tonight, but Eva's gaze locked on me, ignoring her. "Tell me, sister, how does it feel? To know the will you depended on has turned to ash in your hands?" My chest tightened. "It was never about money, Eva. It was about Father's wishes, his memory." "Oh, spare me your sainthood," she sneered, slamming her glass onto the table. The sharp crack made several relatives flinch. "You've always hidden behind words like duty and sacrifice. But I know the truth. You loved being the favorite. You basked in it while I suffocated." "Eva, stop," I whispered, but my voice was shaking. Her eyes glistened, not with tears, but with venom. "Why should I stop?" "They all need to hear it. Clara, the perfect daughter. Clara, the chosen heir. Clara, who never once wondered what it was like to live in my shadow." Gasps fluttered around the table. My cheeks burned hot, shame and rage tangling inside me. "You think I wanted any of this?" I snapped, my voice louder than I intended. "You think I enjoyed watching you slip further away every year?" "I tried, Eva. I begged you to talk to me, but you shut me out." Her lips curled. "Talk to you? When you looked at me like a burden? When Mother compared me to you every time I breathed wrong?" Mother sobbed, her head bowing low. "Eva, that isn't true." "Isn't it?" Eva hissed. "Admit it, Mother. You loved Clara more. You always did." The room erupted in whispers. Some relatives shook their heads, others avoided eye contact, unwilling to be caught in the storm. And then Eva leaned back, her smile returning, colder than ever. "Tell me, Clara, how does it feel to know that everything you cling to, your reputation, your inheritance, even your place in this family, is hanging by a thread I can cut whenever I please?" I wanted to shout, to throw the ledger on the table, to expose her theft. But Daniel caught my eye from across the room, shaking his head slightly. "Not yet." And in that moment, I understood why. Because Eva wasn't done. She wasn't just tearing at the will or the money. She was tearing at the very soul of the family. One insult, one truth, one twisted confession at a time. The candles flickered. The soup had gone cold. My mother wept silently into her napkin. And Eva smiled, savoring the silence that followed her words. Her smile told me one thing with bone-deep certainty. She had more secrets, and she wasn't afraid to bleed us with them. If your sister humiliated you in front of your entire family, would you fight back immediately or wait for the right moment to strike? The dining room had collapsed into silence after Eva's tirade. My mother sobbed quietly into her napkin. Uncle Richard smirked like a satisfied fox, and the rest of the family avoided my eyes. The air was thick with shame, anger, and something darker I couldn't yet name. That's when a new voice broke the tension. "Well," a woman said dryly from the doorway, "that was quite the performance." Heads turned. There, standing with her hands clasped around a worn handbag, was Mrs. Lane, the neighbor. At first, no one spoke. It was as if she had wandered into the wrong play, the wrong stage, but her eyes gleamed with a kind of quiet satisfaction, as if she had been waiting for this moment. Eva's smile faltered for the first time. "What are you doing here?" Mrs. Lane adjusted her shawl and stepped into the room. "I was invited," she said smoothly, "though perhaps you forgot." "You sent invitations to half the street, Eva. A bold move, considering the circumstances." A murmur of disbelief rippled through the family. Eva stiffened, her jaw tightening. "I don't know what you're implying," Eva said, her voice suddenly sharp. "Oh, don't play coy with me," Mrs. Lane replied. "I heard you?" "Clear as day. That night in your garden, talking with Richard. You thought the hedge was thick enough to hide your words. But sound travels, dear, especially when you're plotting something as outrageous as faking your own death." The room froze. Gasps, sharp intakes of breath, muttered prayers. It all swirled together as the weight of her words dropped like a stone. I stared at Eva, my heart hammering. "She's telling the truth?" I whispered, though I already knew the answer. Eva's eyes blazed. "She's lying." But her voice was too quick, too defensive. Mrs. Lane shook her head. "I may be old, but my ears are sharp. I heard you and Richard. You spoke of invitations, of flowers, of how they'd all collapse when you appeared alive. It wasn't about testing love, was it? It was about spectacle. Control." All eyes turned to Uncle Richard. He fumbled with his glass, his smirk slipping. "This is nonsense," he muttered. "She's senile." But no one seemed convinced. I leaned forward, my pulse racing. "Why, Eva? Why would you stage your own funeral?" Eva's lips curved into a brittle smile. "Because it worked. Look at you all, broken, desperate, clinging to crumbs of truth. For once, you can't ignore me." But Mrs. Lane wasn't finished. She stepped closer, her gaze never leaving Eva's face. "That wasn't all I heard. You said something else that night, something about your birth certificate." The room went still again. My mother paled, her hand flying to her mouth. Eva's mask slipped for the briefest second. Eyes wide, breath caught. Before she recovered, her laugh brittle and sharp. "You old witch," she hissed. "You know nothing." Mrs. Lane's smile was thin. "Oh, but I know enough. Enough to say that perhaps Clara isn't the one living with lies." I swallowed hard, my throat dry. My gaze darted between Eva, shaking with fury, and my mother, trembling with a look of dread I'd never seen before. "Birth certificate?" I whispered. "What is she talking about?" Eva's eyes locked on mine, full of venom. "You'll regret asking that, Clara." The candles flickered violently, as if even the flames recoiled from her words, and for the first time that night, I felt it deep in my bones. This wasn't just about money or inheritance. This was about identity. The dining room had gone so silent, you could hear the clock ticking on the mantel. My mother sat frozen, her eyes wide, her napkin crumpled in trembling hands. Daniel stared at the table as if he were afraid to lift his head. Uncle Richard muttered curses under his breath, but even he looked rattled. And Eva was shaking, not with fear, but with rage. You dare! She hissed at Mrs. Lane, her voice trembling. You dare come into my family's house and spit lies? Mrs. Lane's chin lifted. They aren't lies, Eva. You can deny it all you like, but the truth has a way of clawing itself to the surface. I looked at my mother. What truth? My voice cracked, raw with dread. Helen's lips parted, but no sound came. Her face was ashen, her body trembling as if the very question would shatter her. Eva slammed her hands against the table, the sound like a gunshot. Enough! She screamed. Fine. If no one else will say it, I will. Her eyes burned into mine, and her voice lowered into a cruel whisper that still carried through the room. I'm not your sister, Clara. Not by blood. Not by anything that matters. The words sliced through me. My chest constricted. My breath caught. What are you talking about? Her smile was twisted, triumphant. I was never father's daughter. I was never even mother's child. I was taken in, adopted, a charity case in pretty dresses. That's why they loved you more, because I was never truly theirs. Gasps erupted around the table. Several relatives clutched their pearls, their hands, their prayers. My mother broke down, sobbing, shaking her head. No, Eva. No, please. It wasn't like that. Wasn't it? Eva spat, tears welling but never falling. All those years I felt it. The stares, the comparisons, the way you praised Clara for breathing but scolded me for existing. You think a child doesn't know when she doesn't belong? I felt the blood drain from my face. My hands trembled as I gripped the edge of the table. My mind swirled, memories, flashes of childhood moments I had never questioned. Times when Eva had looked at me with eyes so full of pain, I mistook it for anger. Eva, I whispered, my throat thick with guilt. Why didn't you tell me? Her laugh was broken, bitter. Tell you? And what would you have done? Hugged me? Whispered that I was still your sister? Lies. You lived in the comfort of belonging while I drowned in the truth. Mother finally found her voice, weak and trembling. Eva, we never meant, don't you dare! Eva shrieked, pointing at her with trembling fingers. Don't you dare pretend this wasn't your secret to keep. You let me grow up in your house, in Clara's shadow, knowing I would never be more than a replacement. My heart shattered. I wanted to deny it, to tell her she was wrong, that blood didn't matter, that love could still bind us. But the rage in her eyes told me none of that would heal her now. Uncle Richard leaned forward, his voice oily. And there it is. The truth none of you wanted to admit. No wonder she and I understand each other. Eva's glare softened at him for a moment, a strange alliance solidifying in the open. I stood, my voice trembling but firm. You think this makes you less, Eva? You think adoption makes you unloved? You are my sister. You'll always be my sister. Her laugh was sharp, cutting. Sister? Don't insult me, Clara. You had everything. Blood, inheritance, the pedestal, and I had ashes. Always ashes. Tears stung my eyes, but I couldn't let them fall. Because even through her rage, I saw something deeper. A wound so raw, it had never healed. The room sat stunned, divided between pity and horror. And in the silence, Eva leaned closer. Her whisper meant only for me. You may have blood, Clara, but I have fire, and fire burns everything. If you discovered your sister wasn't truly your blood, would you fight to hold on to her, or finally let her go? The dining room buzzed with the aftershocks of Eva's revelation. Adoption. A word that had cracked the family in two. Some relatives whispered in pity, others in judgment. My mother sat slumped, sobbing into her hands. And Eva? She sat tall, her chin raised, basking in the storm she had unleashed. Her eyes never left mine, daring me to deny her pain. Then Daniel stood. Quiet, steady Daniel, who had stayed in the shadows all evening, finally moved into the light. He placed a leather-bound folder onto the table with a deliberate thud. "Enough," he said. His voice was calm, but it carried an edge I'd never heard before. "Eva, you've played your games long enough." But games end when proof appears. Every eye turned to him. Even Eva tilted her head, intrigued. Daniel opened the folder and spread the papers across the table. Bank statements, transfer records, account numbers, photocopies of checks. "I found these in Uncle Richard's study," he continued, his voice shaking only slightly. "Eva has been draining the family's money for years, moving it into offshore accounts, hiding it under shell companies. This," he tapped the ledger with his finger, "isn't rumor. It's fact." Gasps rippled across the room. Several relatives leaned forward, whispering. My heart pounded. Finally, there was something solid, something undeniable. Eva looked down at the papers, then she laughed. A long, mocking laugh that echoed off the walls. "Really, Daniel? This is your grand reveal? Numbers on a page? Do you think they'll believe you over me?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "It's not just numbers. These transfers bear your initials, your signatures." She picked up one of the papers delicately, like it was a prop in her play. She held it up, waving it for all to see. "Initials can be forged, signatures can be copied, money can move in many directions. For all they know, this could be your doing." Daniel murmurs spread again, doubt creeping in. My stomach twisted. I wanted to shout, to defend him, but Eva's voice drowned out reason. She leaned back, tossing the paper onto the table. "It's so easy to create a villain, isn't it? So convenient. I fake a funeral, and suddenly I'm capable of anything. Perhaps Daniel envies me. Perhaps Clara does too. Maybe this is all one elaborate attempt to make me disappear for real." Her gaze snapped to me, sharp as glass. "Isn't that right, Clara? Haven't you always wanted me gone?" My throat burned. "That's not true." "Isn't it?" She pressed, her voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Every look, every sigh, every time Mother praised you and I was left in the dark, you relished it. And now, with these little papers, you think you can finally erase me." "No!" I shouted, slamming my fist against the table. The sound startled everyone. My breath came fast, ragged. "I never wanted you gone, Eva. I wanted you whole. I wanted you safe. But you chose this path. You chose lies." The room fell silent. Eva stared at me, her smile faltering just enough for me to glimpse the fury beneath. Then she leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that still carried. "Careful, Clara. You may have proof, but I have truth. And truth in my mouth can sound sweeter than your evidence ever will." My skin prickled. She was daring me to push back, to use the ledger, to ignite the next fire. Daniel gathered the papers, his hands trembling. "I'll take this to Patel," he muttered. "She'll know what to do." Eva's laugh followed him like a curse. "Take it where you like, cousin. Evidence means nothing when a family already doubts itself. And the chilling part? I saw it in their faces. The hesitation, the fear, the doubt. Eva had poisoned the room so deeply that even the truth tasted bitter. The papers lay scattered across the table like fallen soldiers, ink and numbers that should have been enough to end Eva's reign. But the silence that followed felt wrong, heavy with hesitation. I saw it in their faces. Doubt. Fear. The kind of fear that made truth fragile. Eva stood slowly, her chair scraping back with a piercing screech. She didn't need a gavel to command the room. Her presence was enough. "Let's stop pretending," she said, her voice calm now, almost soothing. "This family has always lived on appearances. Smiles at weddings, whispers at funerals, secrets tucked neatly away in closets. But if I open those closets, she spread her arms wide, her eyes sweeping the table. All your skeletons come tumbling out. My stomach dropped. What are you saying? I whispered. Eva's smile was razor thin. I'm saying I don't need money to win. I don't need papers or wills or signatures. I need only one thing, your silence. Because if you force me into a corner, if you try to expose me, she leaned forward, her voice low and dangerous. I will drag every single one of you into the mud with me. Gasps echoed around the table. Uncle Richard smirked knowingly, as if this was the moment he'd been waiting for. Mother clutched her chest, whispering prayers under her breath. Daniel stiffened, his knuckles white against the ledger he still held. I found my voice. You'd destroy your own family? For what? Revenge? Eva's eyes locked on mine, cold and unflinching. For survival. She stepped closer, her heels striking the floor like war drums. Let's be honest, Clara. I know about your mistakes, the things you've buried, the things you wouldn't want Mother or anyone else knowing. My blood ran cold. You're bluffing. Her smirk widened. Am I? Her gaze shifted to Daniel. And you, dear cousin. Shall I tell them about the gambling debts? The nights you spent draining your own accounts to cover the shame? You think the ledger only exposes me? Oh no, it exposes you too. Daniel froze, his face pale. Eva turned to the others, her voice rising. And the rest of you? Don't look so smug. I know who's cheated taxes, who's stolen from the estate, who's had affairs. I've been watching, listening, waiting. The room trembled with panic. Relatives glanced at one another, horrified, guilty, terrified. She had them all in her grip. This is my ultimatum, Eva declared, her voice sharp as a blade. You stay silent about me, my supposed crimes, my funeral, my past, or I burn this family from the inside out. Every secret, every shame, laid bare for the world, silence followed. The only sound was the faint clatter of a spoon falling from someone's trembling hand. My mother broke down in sobs. Eva, please, no more. But Eva stood tall, her eyes gleaming with triumph. No more? Oh, Mother, this is only the beginning. She turned back to me, her smile cutting like glass. So, Clara, what's it going to be? Do you fight me? Or do you bury the truth with the rest of the family's bones? My heart pounded. Everyone's eyes were on me now, desperate, pleading, afraid. Eva had twisted the knife so deep, it was no longer about justice. It was about survival. If your sister threatened to expose everyone's darkest secrets, would you risk the family's destruction to stop her? Or surrender to her control? Eva's ultimatum hung in the air like smoke after a fire, choking everyone at the table. No one dared to breathe too loudly. The only sound was my mother's soft, broken sobs. But I had had enough. For years, I had stayed silent. For years, I had watched Eva twist truth into daggers, watched her turn love into poison. But something inside me snapped. I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the floor. You think you hold all the cards, Eva. But you've forgotten one thing. Liars always leave footprints. Her eyes narrowed, a flash of unease breaking her perfect mask. Bold words, Clara. But empty. I pulled my phone from my pocket and held it up. Not empty. Recorded gasps shot through the room. Daniel's head snapped toward me, his eyes wide with shock. Eva's smile froze. I had been recording ever since the will burned. Every threat, every confession, every venom-laced word she had spat into the air, it was all there. Proof. You wanted to expose us? I said, my voice shaking but strong. Then let's expose you first. For the first time, Eva faltered. She lunged forward, her hand reaching for the phone, but Daniel moved faster, blocking her path. "Stay back, Eva," he warned, his voice steadier than I'd ever heard it. Her eyes flicked between us, wild and furious. "You think that little recording will save you? Who will believe you over me?" I pressed the screen, and Eva's own voice filled the room, clear and undeniable. "You stay silent about me, or I burn this family from the inside out." The words echoed off the walls like thunder. Relatives gasped, some crossing themselves, others glaring at her with fresh horror. Eva froze, her face draining of color. For once, she had no words. "This is over," I said, my voice breaking. "Your games, your cruelty, your threats, it ends here." But then, something shifted. Uncle Richard rose slowly, clapping his hands in slow, deliberate mockery. "Well done, Clara." Truly, his eyes gleamed with malice as he glanced at Eva. "But you've made a mistake." My stomach twisted. "What mistake?" I whispered. Eva's smile returned, sharp and chilling, her confidence sliding back into place like a mask. "The mistake?" she purred. "Of thinking you're the only one who records things." The room froze again. She pulled her own phone from her purse, tapping the screen. "Every confession, Clara. Every tear. Every desperate plea you made to me at Mother's bedside. I have it all. And with the right cut, the right spin, guess who looks like the cruel one?" Cold dread spread through me. Around us, the relatives muttered nervously. Doubt crept back into their eyes. The tide that had begun to turn against Eva was already slipping. Daniel gritted his teeth. "She's bluffing." But I wasn't sure, because Eva's smile wasn't the smile of someone bluffing. It was the smile of someone who had already set the trap and was watching me walk right into it. My heart pounded, my hand trembling as I held my phone tighter. The trap was sprung, but this time, it wasn't mine. And as Ava's laughter filled the room again, I realized the truth. She might just drag us all down before anyone escapes. The room felt like it was splitting in two, half gasping over my recording, half trembling under Eva's counter-threat. My phone felt heavier in my hand with every second, as if it carried the fate of the entire family. But then, Daniel moved. Slowly, deliberately, he stepped forward and placed his hand over mine. His eyes, dark and unreadable, met mine for a long moment. "Clara," he said softly, "maybe we should stop this before it destroys us all." At first, I thought he was calming me, urging me to breathe. But then he pulled the phone from my hand. I froze. "Daniel, what are you doing?" He turned, his back now to me, and faced Eva. And then, he handed her the phone. Gasps erupted. My chest constricted, the air stolen from my lungs. Eva's smile widened as she took it, her fingers brushing Daniel's with a softness that felt rehearsed. She raised the phone high, her victory complete. "You see?" she said, her voice dripping with satisfaction. "Even those closest to Clara know where true loyalty lies." My head spun. "Daniel, why?" My voice cracked, breaking on the word. He wouldn't look at me. "I'm sorry, Clara." I had no choice. Eva's laugh rang out, cruel and triumphant. "Oh, he had a choice. He just made the smart one." The betrayal burned hotter than any of Eva's words. Daniel, the cousin who had helped me, who had shown me the ledger, who I thought stood beside me, had just handed me over to her. Tears stung my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. "She has something on you," I whispered, my voice trembling. "What did she threaten you with?" Daniel's silence was my answer, his jaw clenched, his shoulders rigid. Eva smirked, stroking the phone in her hand as though it were a prize. "Our dear Daniel has debts, ugly ones, the kind that ruin reputations. Lucky for him, I have the power to bury them, or expose them." She leaned closer, her eyes glinting. And tonight, he chose survival. The family murmured, scandal spreading through them like wildfire. My mother shook her head, whispering, "Not Daniel. Please, not him." But it was true. The ledger that once felt like our weapon was now just another chain around Daniel's neck. Eva held both phones now, mine and hers, and the power in the room shifted entirely into her hands. "Look at you, Clara," she said sweetly, mock pity dripping from every word. "Abandoned, alone. Even the cousin you trusted most would rather stand with me than risk my wrath. How does it feel?" My lips trembled, but I forced the words out, sharp and clear. "It feels like you've won a battle. Not the war." Her laugh was sharp as glass. "Still clinging to hope, sister? You'll find ashes don't make good weapons, and for the first time, I saw it in her eyes. Not just victory, but hunger." She wasn't satisfied yet. She wouldn't stop until there was nothing left of me to fight with. The betrayal cut deeper than any wound Eva had ever inflicted. And yet, somewhere in that pain, a spark lit inside me. Because if Daniel could betray me, then maybe he could also betray her. If your closest ally suddenly turned against you, would you break completely or hold on, waiting for their weakness to surface? The table that had once held food and laughter now felt like an altar to betrayal. Eva stood at the head of it, holding both phones like trophies, her smile glowing with poisonous triumph. The family watched her in silence, terrified to move, terrified to speak. "This," she announced, lifting her glass as though to toast, "is the moment you will all remember. The night you realized I cannot be defeated. Clara tried, Daniel tried, and yet, here I stand, with proof, with power, with every secret that binds you all." Her laughter rippled through the room. Uncle Richard joined in, clapping his hands once in approval. "To Eva," he said mockingly, raising his own glass. "The rightful heir to chaos." A few relatives shifted uncomfortably, but none dared oppose her. I sat frozen, fury burning hot in my chest. The betrayal from Daniel still cut deep, but even he couldn't meet Eva's eyes now. His hands shook under the table, his gaze fixed on the floor. Eva turned her attention back to me. "Clara," she said sweetly, "I should thank you. Without your little recording, no one would have seen just how desperate you are. Always clinging to evidence, to rules, to fairness. And yet fairness never saved you, did it?" I swallowed hard, forcing my voice to stay calm. "It isn't over, Eva. Truth has a way of surviving, even when people try to bury it." She tilted her head, amused. "Truth? Truth is whatever I make it." She reached for the wine bottle, refilling her glass with deliberate slowness. "Tonight," she declared, "we dine not as a family, but as subjects to the only person strong enough to lead us." "Me?" The words hung in the air like poison. And then, her hand slipped. It was small, almost imperceptible. The wine glass tipped too far, spilling crimson across the table. The liquid bled over the scattered documents, seeping into the ledger, smearing numbers into unreadable stains. Gasps filled the room. Eva froze, her perfect composure cracking for a split second. Daniel jerked forward instinctively, grabbing the ledger to save it, but the damage was done. The ink blurred, the evidence half ruined. Eva recovered quickly, laughing as though it were nothing. "Ah, how fitting," she said lightly. The past washed away in red. But I saw it. I saw the flicker in her eyes. The slip wasn't planned. For once, she hadn't controlled the moment. The relatives saw it too. Doubt crept back into their expressions. For the first time, Eva looked human, fallible. And that was when my mother, frail but defiant, finally spoke. "Enough." Her voice was weak but sharp. cutting through the tension like a knife. She rose shakily to her feet, supported by two cousins, her tear-streaked face full of resolve. "You are my daughter," she said to Eva, her voice breaking. "Blood or not, you are mine, but I will not let you destroy what little is left of this family." Eva's smile faltered. Mother turned to the others, her voice trembling but clear. "You see her tricks. You see her cruelty, but she is not stronger than all of us together. She is only strong because we let her be." The family stirred. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the room. Eva's mask cracked further, panic flashing behind her eyes. "Don't listen to her!" she snapped, her voice rising. "She's weak!" She's always been weak, but the tide had shifted. Her slip of the glass, her overconfidence, Mother's trembling defiance, it all chipped away at the fortress she had built. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw something I never thought I'd see in Eva. Fear. The wine spread like a wound across the table, soaking through papers and linens, staining everything it touched. For a moment, no one moved, no one breathed. Then my mother's voice, weak, trembling but unyielding, cut through the silence. "Eva, no more." The room shifted. Relatives straightened, their whispers rising, their fear beginning to turn into something else. Resolve. Daniel looked from the ruined ledger to Eva, shame written across his face. Even Uncle Richard's smirk faltered as the tide turned. Eva stood frozen, gripping both phones, her eyes darting wildly from face to face. For the first time, she no longer looked untouchable. She looked cornered. "Don't you see?" she cried, her voice cracking. "Without me, this family is nothing. You've all lived in shadows, in lies. I am the only one strong enough to survive them." Her words hung heavy, but they didn't land. Not anymore. I rose slowly, my hands shaking but my voice steady. "No, Eva. You're not strong. You're just loud. And for too long, we let your noise drown out everything else. But strength isn't measured in destruction. It's measured in what survives after the fire." Her eyes locked on mine, burning with fury, with desperation. "So what now, Clara? Do you destroy me, expose me, tear me apart in front of them all?" The family waited. Every breath in the room hinged on my answer. I took a step closer, my voice lowering. "No, Eva. I don't need to. You've already done it to yourself." Her face crumpled, just for a second. The mask she had worn so long slipped, revealing the wounded child beneath, the girl who had felt unloved, unwanted, unseen. For a heartbeat, I almost reached for her. But then she laughed, a hollow, bitter laugh. "You think this is over? You think ashes mean silence?" She tossed both phones onto the table, screens cracking against the wood. "Ashes spread, Clara. They stain everything." She turned, pushing past Richard, who muttered curses under his breath. Without another word, she stormed out of the room. Her footsteps echoed down the hall until the front door slammed shut, leaving only silence in her wake. No one followed. Mother collapsed into her chair, weeping softly. Daniel sat with his head in his hands, broken by guilt. The rest of the family slowly stirred, uncertain, shaken, but no longer afraid. I stood alone, staring at the empty doorway where Eva had vanished. My chest ached, heavy with both relief and sorrow. She was gone, for now. But her shadow lingered, a scar none of us could erase. That night, I walked outside into the cool air, the scent of ash still clinging to me. I looked up at the sky, at the stars scattered across the darkness, and wondered if Eva was staring at them too. She had burned everything she touched, but somewhere beneath the rage and betrayal, I knew the truth. She wasn't born a monster. She was made one, by secrets, by silence, by the very family she had just torn apart, and I couldn't decide what hurt more, losing her as a sister, or realizing I never truly had her at all. I whispered into the night, words carried away by the wind. Goodbye, Eva. For the first time in days, the silence felt like peace. If you've stayed until the end, maybe your heart has felt something too. Leave a comment, hit like, and subscribe if you'd like to keep sharing these journeys with me.